All right, so let's look at last week's snap count for the Cincinnati Bengals. And taking a look at this, it is pretty clear it was the Chase Brown experience. And I'm not going to lie to you, I loved it. Absolutely freaking loved it, man. 30% of the snaps, 18 snaps, a career high for Chase Brown. And he went off, man. He definitely deserved all the credit he's getting for, his playtime last week. Obviously, this week he'll get probably even more snap counts, more snaps against the Vikings. And I'm excited to see, how much he can progress these next 4 weeks because he was supposed to be Samaje Perine's backup, or sorry, replacement, and that's exactly what he's becoming real quickly, honestly. 11 snaps last week, 15% of the snaps. This week he had 18 snaps, 30% of the snap count, so I'm expecting maybe a 50% snap count this week. I could definitely see something in that kind of ballpark range. It really is hilarious how the last 2 weeks he's actually had more snaps than Travion has had since, week 11 to week 14. So, the last 4 games of the season, Chase Brown has had more snaps in the last 2 weeks. So, it's kind of going forward going to be Chase Brown as the backup running back. And again, if we can solidify that RB2 position, maybe in the draft we look for an RB3, I think we can get something going here. All right, so taking a look at the rest of these, yes, A.J. McCarron had 5 snaps last week because of the cramping in the finger of, Jake Browning. With those 5 snaps, I will say that, A.J. definitely didn't look crazy amazing. I mean, one of them came on a 3rd down and long where he just kind of checked it out of the backfield. He did throw a touchdown, which, again, these referees, I'm getting tired of this, and someone pointed this out, and it's very true, actually. This is getting tired of every single time T. Higgins makes a big play. It seems like it's guaranteed we're going to get a pass interference call against T. Higgins. Like, it's almost to a point now where I think the referees are just targeting T. Higgins. Like, oh, T called a big play? Well, that has to be PI. Like, with that and the amount of times he already drops the ball when he's, wide open, it's really not helping, man. It's like either he's going to drop the ball or the refs are going to go PI against him. So, it's a mess. With that being said, every time this happens, his price tag goes down. I'm just saying, okay? You want to keep T. Higgins, if he keeps dropping passes, because listen, if he's not getting production because the quarterback's not good, then other teams are not going to care about that. But if he keeps dropping passes, that goes down, and the PI calls definitely hurts his value too. Now, again, I think, personally speaking, we're going to sign him to a 1 year, we're going to franchise tag him for a 1 year, $25 million deal, or we have option 1, right? $25 million, 1 year, or option 2, and by the way, that would be a restricted franchise tag. Unrestricted franchise tag would be that we go ahead and say, listen, we're going to give you 1 year, $20 million. But if another team wants you, they have to give us 2 first-round picks, and they have to match our offer and give you better than what we're offering you. So he then gets a bag from someone else. We get 2 first-round picks for him, and then we walk away scot-free. So, and the only teams that can actually technically, offer on that has to have a first-round pick this year. So, in theoretically speaking world tier, T right now is, if we give him the non-restricted franchise tag, we could actually get him next year for 1 year, $20 million. And it might be even less than that. I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but so I'm definitely going to say right now, T is not leaving this team after this year. I promise you he's not leaving this team. Because if they can't get a contract done, there's no reason why you would not at least give him a unrestricted, what's called? Is it called unrestricted French? Hang on, I gotta check. I'm stupid. It's exclusive and non-exclusive. Sorry. My bad. Not restricted. It is technically restricted, unrestricted, but it's called a exclusive and non-exclusive tag. A exclusive tag means pretty much no one can touch you, and you are going to give that player the average of the top 5 players of that said position. So if everyone's making, let's say, for example, $50 million, you divide that by 5, and that's exactly what you're going to be giving that player per year. Now, for the non-restricted or the non-exclusive contract, that's going to be the opposite. So it's actually less money. So instead of being 50 million, for example, for quarterbacks, it'd be 35. And what happens is the other team, any other teams can talk to your guy. But in order for them to talk to your guy, they have to give you 2 first-round picks. And if they come up with a contract that is more money than what you're offering, then they have to give you 2 first-round picks, and then they can sign the player. But they can't talk to the player unless they give you 2 first-round picks. So that means there's only a select market of teams that can really talk to your guy. And mainly, those teams are going to be bad teams, or they're going to be trash teams. So it works out for the team, okay? Now, we saw this offseason. Lamar Jackson got the non-exclusive tag, and nobody wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole. So it's very possible we see the same concept here if T is looking for a lot of money. And also having to give up 2 first-round picks is not what a lot of teams are going to want to do. I would actually expect the Bengals to do this because, especially if they're going to try to trade him or maybe think that he's not coming back, they would probably try to do this method because you get a guaranteed 2 first-round picks if he leaves us. And 2 first-round picks, let's be honest, is worth a lot. So, especially for the Bengals, they love their picks. All right, so going back to this, sorry about that little sidetrack there, but I do want to definitely talk about, that little factor. T. Higgins last week did play 75% of the snaps. Moving forward, Jake Browning is fine. He's 100%. He is on the injury report with a forearm injury, but it looks like he should be good. He played 92% of the snaps last week. Going down this list here, for our wide receiving core, Trent Irwin last week, he got 20% of the snaps, and it looks like Yoshi only got 17. So Yoshi he's getting a lot less snaps as of late. I mean, obviously T. Higgins being back helps out a lot for him getting less snaps because Yoshi's an outside receiver, and T. Higgins being back makes Yoshi pretty much irrelevant. I mean, but at the same time, though, I would want to see more. I mean, I love Trent Irwin, but I kind of want to see Yoshi in that situation more than Trent Irwin. And it's not me taking a shot at Trent Irwin. It's just for the future. I want to see what Yoshi can, show us and how he can develop. And so far, he's actually been pretty good. So I would like to see him more in those situations just for the future reference. Not really for, because I think he's that much better than Trent Irwin. I don't think he is. I think Trent Irwin's a great player. But I kind of want to see more of an even split snap count for those 2 guys. Just so we can see what we have in Yoshi instead of Trent Irwin. Now, look at that. Chuck Sizzle had 3 snaps. That is the second highest he's had this whole season. He's had 3 snaps in week 3, 3 snaps last week, and 4 snaps in week 12. Let's go, Chucky! Chucky is making a debut on offense, boys. Other than that, though, no other receiver really got any snaps at all. Tyler Boyd actually had a very low snap count last week. Actually, one of the lowest snap counts of the whole year. 52%, which was 31 total snaps. So it looks like, I don't say they're phasing him out, but they're definitely trying to utilize other guys in there a little bit more than just using the typical guys. Which, again, like I said, might be why they're not going to go ahead and give Yoshi so many snaps, because they're trying to get more people utilized in general in there. For tight ends last week, Drew Sample led the charge at 67%, and yeah, Irv Smith, man, I feel like they're low-key phasing him out because he's really not that much of a playmaker, I feel like, this year for us especially. So if he's not going to be that much of a playmaker, they're going to try to get the guys. Listen, there's only so many players they can put out there every single play, right? They want to put out as many great players as possible. The sad part is there's only 11 guys on the offense that can go out there. So if you have 11 guys on offense and you're like, I love Irv Smith, but Irv Smith doesn't give us the best chance to win, then they're not going to put him out there. So we can see like Tanner Hudson has 23% here. Mitchell Wilcox had 37%, and Drew Sample had 67%. So it kind of seems like they might be phasing out a little bit. Now you could say, well, that's just a simple, last week, it's just how the game flow went. But you got to think last week, we had a lot of offensive drives. Now, we did run the ball a lot, right? And when you run the ball, you're not going to have Irv Smith out there. Irv Smith is not a run-blocking, tight end, not wide receiver. He's not a run-blocking tight end, so you're not going to have him out there in run-blocking. So, again, like I said, there are different theories on why you would not utilize Irv Smith in certain game plans. But I will be interested to see how this looks versus the Minnesota Vikings if we start utilizing him more. But he hasn't really been in this offense and doing anything as of late anyway. All right, so defensive lineman. BJ Hill led the team with 55% snap count. Then it was DJ Reader at 48%, Zach Carter 45%, Josh 23%. And let's look at the defensive ends, because this is where we always care about, and that's Myles Murphy. Now, Myles Murphy actually had he tied his second highest snap count, which actually came in week 10 and last week at 36% snap count. So we actually did utilize him a lot last week, and that's, I guess, the positive, right? Is that we actually got him on the field, and hopefully didn't really do much last week, but at least he's out there, right? At least he's doing something, getting some play time. So far this season, it's been kind of wishy-washy. Week 6, he had 1 snap. Week 5, he had 7 snaps. Week 3, he had 7 snaps. So it's been kind of ups and downs, peaks and valleys with him when it comes to, us trusting that he can be on the field and he's not a liability. Joseph Asai, another guy that I really expected this year to really take off and blossom. Obviously, saw the year off on injuries and having injuries, so that definitely didn't help him. But he really never got going this year so far, which is kind of disappointed. Going down to the linebacking position, obviously we talked about Joe Bachie with his quad injury. He's only played 1 snap last week, and before last week, 1 snap. He played 1 snap in week 6, 1 snap week 4, 1 snap in week 2, and week 1. So, I'm not trying to be mean when it comes to some of these injuries, and when I report them, and I'm like, oh, yeah, Joe Bachie has a quad injury, and I'm like, oh, that's so awful. But it's like, some of these guys, when they do have injuries, I don't want to see them injured. Obviously, I don't want to see our guys injured. But it's not that big of a deal when it comes to the game, right? It's not that big a deal when it breaks it down to how would this affect us for our next game. Because this guy has had 5 snaps all year long, right? So Marcus Bailey is just going to get more snaps, and that's pretty much that. For cornerbacks, last week we had 14 snaps for Poison Ivey. It was the Poison Ivey debut, which I was actually very surprised about because I thought that he was a liability, and that's why the Bengals were not using him. Because you look at this, Steelers game, he had 12 snaps, right? Our defense wasn't the greatest in the Steelers game. And I thought, okay, well, if the defense isn't the greatest in the Steelers game, then it's probably, they don't want to utilize him anymore because look at week 13. They gave him 4 snaps, and we literally only had 1, 2, 3 cornerbacks out there because Jalen Davis got 0 snaps. So I was like, okay, well, that means they're probably going to try to utilize, they just don't want to utilize Poison Ivy because they don't think he's good enough to be out there, and he could be a liability in certain plays. Now, obviously, last game he had a big play in that game, so that's even more awesome. But no, he had a career high 22% of the snaps last week, 14 snaps total. Jalen Davis really got phased out of last week's game, and we did run 4 cornerbacks. We ran Poison Ivy, Cheeto, DJ Turner, and Mike Hilton, which again, previous week only 3 cornerbacks. Absolutely awesome to see Poison Ivy getting out there more. As I said many times, I want to see these rookies getting playtime. I want to see them going out there and really performing and showing us what we have in them. Because again, that's the future of this team, I would love to sit here and say, we're going to be able to keep all the great players throughout the next 10 years, and they're going to be just as great as they've always been, but that's just simply not the fact. Mike Hilton has an expiration date. Same thing with Cheeto. So we need to have guys that can replace these guys eventually, and when you have a guy like Poison Ivy, who's a 7th-round draft pick, who really, realistically speaking, shouldn't be this good or good at all, if he can blossom into anything productive, that's amazing. Alright, so I'm taking away my face cam for a second because the bottom here. But Jordan Battle, 88%. He's continuing his reign of success, and I could not be happier for him, man. Again, like I said, when we drafted him, a guy from Alabama, he's coming from a pro-level offense, and he's getting the job done in every way possible. 88% snap count, another great week for him. Nick Scott, another 13%. We're kind of phasing him out more and more as we can. And I would love to see more Poison Ivy in there over Nick Scott if we could do different packages with that. I think it would be awesome. Dax Hill, 98% of the snap count. And of course, Tyson Anderson still injured, so he's not going to be on the snap count at all. So overall wise, I think, we're getting a lot of what we want here. We're seeing that some of the guys we want to see utilized, like for example, we want to see Chase Brown utilized, Poison Ivy utilized. Obviously, Miles Murphy is getting utilized to a certain degree. And the only guy I would say we're not utilizing still is Chuck Sizzle. And listen, I love Chuck Sizzle. But what I've seen so far is him as a punt returner, other than the Ravens game way back in the day, he really hasn't been that great of a punt returner. He really hasn't. And I think he's not as much of a liability, I think, than Trent Irwin, because Trent Irwin has actually dropped a couple kickoffs and has almost fumbled a couple. He fumbled, I think, one punt, and we recovered it. But still, though, I don't think he's that much of a liability, but he doesn't really do anything when he's back there. He kind of just runs to the left or runs to the right and goes out of bounds. So because he's most likely not going to be that great of a punt returner, I would honestly kind of say I want Travion Williams back there. Travion Williams had a couple good kickoffs this year. I think he could be a solid punt returner. If we're not going to utilize him on offense because we're using Chase Brown more, then why not utilize, why not utilize him on the punt return game and actually give our offense more weapons with Chuck Sizzle? I mean, we drafted Chuck Sizzle in the 4th round out of Purdue to be a replacement eventually for Tyler Boyd. And so far, it seems like we're just not using him at all. And I know I'm preaching about this every single week, and it's never going to happen that we actually utilize this guy. But I feel like as more and more, we get closer and closer here to, the end of the year, we're seeing Chuck Sizzle just isn't that good of a punt returner. And I hate to say that, but it is true. And if he's not, then who cares? Just put somebody else back there, Put Travion. Can you imagine, listen, with how our offense has a backup quarterback, right? We're dealing with all the injuries we're dealing with. To have a free punt return during a game, we would win like half the games we lost already. We would have won 3 of our 6 losses if we had a guaranteed free punt return sometime throughout our game. The Steelers game, we would have beat them if we had a free punt return. So why not give us the best opportunity possible to get a punt return in these games and put someone like Travion back there? I think he's faster, and I think he's a little bit better of a punt returner. And again, a lot of that is Travion has been a punt returner, kick returner for a while for us now, while Chuck Sizzle, hasn't really had that, experience. So again, if it's not working for him, okay. When did he get hurt? He got hurt on a punt return. He broke his thumb on a punt return. So put him on offense. See what he can do on offense. See what receiving, capability we can get from him. Because that's why we drafted the guy. Because he's good in open space. He's good at getting open. So, I don't know. Like I said, I still think that they're scared of him because of his injuries and how he got hurt in preseason. And they're scared if they put him out there, he's just going to get injured again. And they at least now know that they have one punt return game. And I got to give his credit. He has great hands. Like, he is good at catching the punt returns. I don't think unless I am correct, you can correct me down below if I'm incorrect, I don't think he's dropped one punt return yet. So he's very good at making sure he doesn't, drop the punt returns. But again, I'd rather have a guy who potentially, 1 in a million chance will drop it, but at the same time, actually gives us a chance to get good field position or a touchdown. Because a good punt return in field goal range, I mean, that's 3 points, right? And if your offense is struggling, 3 points are 3 points. Why did we beat the Seahawks? We beat the Seahawks because Cam Taylor-Britt picked it off and got into his field goal range. We went 3 and out, and Money Mac kicked the field goal. So, this is my cup of tea, guys. Tell me down below your thoughts and opinions. I'll see you guys next one.